welcome to Dialogue. Experts say that by 2050, some 70% of the global population will be living in cities. In view of this developing trend and to provide a better life for urban citizens, over the past 5 years, Beijing has been committed to reforming its public complaint response mechanism. How does the mechanism work? How will it influence the direction of further reforms of urban governance in the digital era? And what kind of solutions is China providing for smart urban governance for cities across the world? Join us for our discussion today from Beijing. I'm Xu Qinduo. Joining me today are Professor Jinzhao from Beijing Foreign Studies University, Josef Gregory Mahoney, Professor of Politics at East China Normal University, and Professor David Moser at International Culture Institute of Capital Normal University. Welcome to Dialogue. So, Professor Li, I will start with you. You are a long-term resident of Beijing. So tell us your experience or your understanding of this hotline 12345. We are talking about this because we are going to have this a forum on this rapid response or swift response to complaints of citizens. So tell us, your understanding of this 12345 hotline. What's it about?
Thank you for having me. This hotline is a new platform initiated in 2019 to centralize all the previous hotline services. So this has brought a lot of convenience or immediate convenience to the residents in Beijing. Before 2019, you of course you could complain by using hotlines, but you had to decide, is this related to the water facility, or is it related to the heating system? Is it related to the noise from the streets? And then you have to decide based on your prior knowledge which department's hotline to call. But this one has brought all the complaints to one platform, so it's very convenient. And I have used the platform twice.
Okay.
Once for the construction site, the noise late at night, and the other is for a restaurant, the ventilation system of the restaurant that causes a lot of noise right downstairs of our neighborhood. And on each case, I had very satisfactory handling, and also I got very proactive feedback from the operators of the hotline.
How long does it take, to solve your concern?
It was very fast. On each case, on the first case about the construction site, it was the next day. After I called at 11 p.m. and then I called at 1 a.m. and I got immediate calls. I was surprised that people could call me right back. And then the following day, the realtor and the construction site leader, they contact me, they asked me about the details. And then they turned off the engine. It turned out to be again a vacuum, a big fan. They forgot to turn off at night. And the other case, it was handled within a week. So they asked the restaurant owner to put an extra layer of insulation to prevent the noise from spreading into the neighborhood, into our buildings.
David, you are also living in Beijing, for years and for decades, I guess. So you were actually in those facilities, hotline operation, and also you met those people working in the facilities. Tell us, share with us what it is like.
Well, I had used it before, and it had on some problems similar to Professor Lee's, that they were very responsive. But this was the first time I'd actually been able to see the facilities and actually meet some of the people there, that the operators that actually received the calls. And one thing, they had invited me to take part in this forum. So they said, if you have problems, please go through the the process of making a complaint and see how effective it is nowadays, because they've updated their facilities and moved it to a much more efficient place. But what was great was I went there, and when I was giving a tour of it, somebody said, "Oh, David Moser is here." And the operator that had been handling my case came up and we actually met. And I was able to meet her and talk to her and express my gratitude, for helping me. And then she also began to help me find out information to apply for a green card. Mm-hmm. Now that they've updated the eligibility requirements, if you just have a PhD, you can apply for a green card. So this is a case where the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 is so useful, because getting online is almost useless for some of these things, because there's so much information that's old, it's outdated, years ago. Especially the green card, you can't get the newest information by just randomly searching sites, right? You need the most up-to-date information. And as far as I know, everything on their computer system is the most up-to-date information. And if it's not, they will find out. And just like Professor Lee, I found out they called me back several times to ask how I'm doing. Have you gone and gotten the information yet? And also, ask if I was satisfied with the service or not. So, really amazingly efficient, effective.
Professor Mahoney, I know you were involved in the field work of the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, this hotline, swift response. Tell us, what's the idea behind this integration or centralization of several hotlines into this one, and then they are upgrading the system. What is the purpose, and why they are doing this, and for what purpose here?
One of the things that I found sort of special about it is that I've sort of surveyed other major systems in the world. I was recently in Europe. I looked long and hard, for example, in London, while I was there for a comparable system. And what I found were literally dozens of different hotlines, and they were never the same number, because as some people know, London is composed of many smaller cities, and you have to know precisely, where your jurisdictions are in terms of the block that you live on, and then you have to know to call a specific number for a specific problem. So that can be something that I think is perhaps off-putting or difficult for local people to really master. In this case, as David was mentioning, you dial the number and you get sent to a call center, this updated call center in Beijing, where the call is triaged. It's determined how fast is a response required based on the issue. It can be anywhere from 2 hours to 7 to 14 days, depending on the severity of the issue. But one of the things that I found is that they have a process where within a minute of receiving the call, they have to forward the call to the relevant authorities, who then may mobilize other authorities into the process. And in the cases that I was looking at, these were issues that were being sent to the local street or community level organizations, and within an hour, people were calling back. They were really making this a priority. In any event, one of the things that we know is that people are guaranteed a response, their high satisfaction rates, and it's creating democratic solutions at the grassroots level that I think have been envisioned by Beijing, and certainly the central government, as being a constituent element of whole process people's democracy. Now, I think one of the things that we have to make clear here, and I think David has made this clear in part by revealing that he's still seeking to gain the green card. It's being called a citizen service, but in fact, it's available to anyone who dials it. All you have to be is in China.
Professor Lee, my understanding is because there's only this one number, so basically all kinds of issues, as long as you are concerned, you have a problem with, probably you can call this number, and then people in the operation center understands which department it should go to, right?
Yeah, so after the calls collected, they are sorted into categories. the inquiries, such as David's inquiry about how to apply for a green card, or complaints, or disputes. So they will categorize in terms of immediacy, and the nature of the call, and then they will place, they call it work orders, to the involved parties, either at the district level or at the sub-district level of Beijing, or the township level, or the town, or the neighborhoods.
Other neighborhoods. So, based on
Yeah.
your understanding, what are the most probably, issues about, complaints about? Earlier, David, did mention a little about, probably construction site, the noise, renovation of their apartments. So, in your experience, what are those complaints, most common complaints probably, or inquiries from the citizens?
Well, in my understanding, there are all different kinds of complaints. In terms of daily livelihood, the inquiry problems can be handled more immediately, more easily. But after the cases have been collected for a while, the municipal government realizes that there are some long-term issues. So now they are entering the this SWIFT program, the 3.0. So there was the 3.1 version, which is the concentration of all the inquiries and the complaints. And then the second stage is the immediacy. So then the timeline or deadline is placed. For inquiries, the questions have to be answered in 2 hours. And for the longest problems, certain explanations and resolutions need to be provided in 14 days. So now the difficult part is solving those long-term issues. So the government now is aiming at one long-term issues per month. So that means every year they are focusing on solving 12 primary issues or primary problems.
Yes, Professor Mahoney, as Professor Lee has said, there are all kinds of issues and concerns from the local residents. They can report to the hotline service, and some of them are really challenging, actually. I have this number. Last year, Beijing Citizen Hotline handled over 21 million inquiries, with both the resolution and the satisfaction rates scoring over 95%. That's really good. So looking ahead, what's the priority, and what's their plan? We have been seeing this constant reform of this hotline service over the past, let's say, 5 years. And Professor Lee mentioned about every year, every month, they have one priority, long-term, as David said, super hard issues. They try to sort out those kind of challenges. How difficult is that? I know, sometimes it involves several different departments. It involves ideas from 10 years ago, 20 years ago. Now you have to bring them back to facilitate the process of whatever case there. And the long-term plan, long-term reform, let's say, any kind of plans there?
Well, first, let's say that one of the interesting things about the system, and I think this will help clarify some of the earlier comments, is that if someone like David calls or Professor Lee calls, and they have a specific issue, something's too loud, or they're trying to figure out how to change the name on a deed. This is something the problem may be complicated or it may be simple depending on the specific issue, but that's responding to sort of a single point. Now, in some cases, these are one-offs, or maybe there are a lot of people who call about noise complaints. But in any event, the first thing that we see with the system is that it creates this digital paper trail, so that you have this overarching system that ensures that needs are being met, that responses, that complaints are being addressed. So it's not something that, you in the past, maybe you have to be concerned that if you call someone, maybe they won't take adequate responsibility, or they won't know how to deal with it, or maybe they'll push it off to someone else. Now we have a system that absolutely ensures that responsibility will be taken for whatever complaint has been raised. But that's just the first level, right? The second level is that they are using AI, they are using big data, and they're trying to look at trends. So where do we have a large number of problems? Certainly, sometimes we have a single problem that's attracting a lot of different calls. Maybe there's a problem in a particular housing complex where thousands of people live, and maybe a lot of people from that complex have called, and that certainly warrants a stronger attention. But sometimes you can see, well, maybe there are a large number of problems across the city, and then policymakers can take this data and look at it and think about how to adjust policies at the local or even national level. So these are some of the things to keep in mind there. Now, in terms of your question, you were asking specifically, as I was distracted there by the technical aspect. But what was the where might it go in the future, right? Mm-hmm. Clearly, it's something that I think that they want to continue to publicize and promote, both within Beijing but nationally, and they want to continue to step up its capacity and ensure that the satisfaction rates stay as high as they are now, over 95%. I think, though, that one of the things that they want to ensure is that people understand that this is how Chinese democracy works, that you can directly engage with your government. You can call people down to deal with you at the street or neighborhood level, and ensure that it's done according to the rule of law, that it's done in a way that hears your voice and your concerns, that it takes into account others around you to create solutions that are meaningful.
David, as Professor Mahoney has said, I mean, it involves law. I assume, it requires the cooperation or the participation of, say, experts on laws, experts in different area, people who are familiar with those regulations. I mean, to solve any specific issues, there are issues like what you have mentioned, super hard ones, involves documents, involves history, historical records, and changes. I mean, China develops fast. There are a lot of changes, and then how to deal with that. So you were there. You do see how many people were there, and their participation of experts, people with expertise in different areas.
Absolutely, it's a very multifarious and factorial kind of project going on here, because it touches on all aspects of life. Not only, I think Gregory just gave a nice summary of the kind of complicated generational changes and legal changes over the long period of time. But one thing that impressed me a lot, getting to hear the operators, the people who were in charge of taking the calls, to talk about their own experience. And it requires actually a very highly trained person to take these calls and deal with them, because not only are the issues complex, but the people that call in, sometimes they're confused, sometimes they're upset, sometimes they're angry, and very often they have to deal with, for example, an elderly person who calls the hotline and to solve a problem, but the elderly person is quite lonely and wants to talk. And so they make multiple calls to the hotline saying the same thing over and over again, because they simply want a human being to talk with. And the people who take these calls have to be not only, experts, at least experts in finding these technical solutions, but also this human problem of dealing with a human being who's going through, issues and using the hotline to solve something. The people have to be I don't know how to put it, but they have to have a certain human feel, a feeling for the people and how to deal with these human problems in a respectful way that doesn't waste resources. And that impressed me a lot. With 20 million Beijingers calling in at various times, all of them are not as savvy and aware of legal issues. Sometimes they're just hurting, pain, afraid, frustrated, and they need to talk to these people. And for me, I think that must be one of the most challenging things about the job.
Professor Li, thinking about this, in the bigger terms like governance, grassroots level governance, or urban governance, or this, even a word like a democracy. People are expressing themselves directly, solving their problems directly. I mean, how do you look at this issue in terms of probably like urban governance, city management here?
Yeah, thank you for asking that question. Now we emphasize in China, we emphasize people-centered governance. Actually, this new campaign or this new policy speaks directly to the United Nations call for smart city growth or smart governance initiative. Because urbanization is a universal phenomenon, all the big cities or the mega cities in the world are facing the same problem of more effective management and effective governing. So now in China, we're happy to see this new emphasis on local governance, the grassroots governance. A prominent effect of this new policy is the convenience, definitely convenience for the residents, for the locals in Beijing, and also the effectiveness of the grassroots management, the grassroots performance, because every grassroots level or medium level government officials, they are annually evaluated in terms of their administrative performance. And so now there are three rates: the complaint rates from their neighborhood, and the rate of solution, and the rate of satisfaction. So these three rates are becoming a major part of their annual performance evaluation. So the way it promotes grassroots level of governance is that the local social workers and the head of the villages, the street offices, the neighborhood offices, they are more responsive, they are more attentive to the pleas, to the complaints, the problems from their neighborhood, from their local residents.
Mm-hmm. David, we know like when we talk about the Chinese policies, domestically or externally, it's often, big words, big policies. But we are talking today is specific issues. But behind these specific issue, what do you see as probably like, philosophy or ideas of the Chinese side in terms of governing, in terms of ensuring people are happy with their life, people are able to solve their problem, of course, with the assistance of this like hotline here, like in a big city like Beijing, 21 million people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, that's a big issue. That's a big question. I think it's obvious for anyone who lives in China, studies China, that one of the biggest problems with this country is the large population. And that it's very, very hard to keep those large populations satisfied, happy, safe, and so forth, right? So I mean, I think probably there's something about the objective conditions of China dealing with large populations with disastrous consequences if things are not governed effectively, that they have to come up with some very efficient solutions and put money and facilities into it to make it work. And I think that's a lesson to be learned. A lot of countries have been satisfied to have local problems or isolated, fragmented, sorts of systems that deal with specific problems. China really it behooves China to find global problems to these solutions, to these problems that have solutions that work at all levels. that at the macro level and at the micro level as well. And this is an example, I think, of the kind of solution that they come up with when they're faced with that sort of challenge.
Yeah, Professor Mahoney, I want your opinion on this. I was speaking to a young man from actually the U.S. I think last week. He was here for the first time in May. He was talking about I tried to look for the homeless people in the city of in Beijing. To see if there are homeless people and how many of them, what kind of situation they are in. Of course, he failed to find any of them. It does not mean there are no homeless people, probably, but very few, I would say. But still, that's part of the problem in terms of management of big cities here. It's one hotline, but it's a very comprehensive approach, probably, to deal with the manifold problems cities face around the world.
Well, I think, and I think China is the first country the first to acknowledge this. There are poor people in China. There are poor people in Beijing. There are people who are struggling, but there are also services there available to them. And certainly the hotline makes it easier for them to access those services or to alleviate some of the immediate challenges they may be facing. Whether it has to do with heat or electricity or other issues. And I think one of the things that I always have to come back to, because I live in Shanghai, and when I'm in Beijing, I'm usually dealing with universities or government offices. Getting down into the local communities, getting down into the old hutongs and some of the old buildings, and really getting close to how some people do struggle to make ends meet and to live a better life. And so I think this is the areas these are some of the areas that I was visiting in the past few weeks, as well as communities that were getting older. And we know that this is a major concern in China. How do we meet the growing needs of a graying population? How do we make sure that they have access to their homes? Do we need to add elevators to their homes, so forth and so on? So these are all things that are really trying to address these things by putting people first. Now, to go back to something again that David was saying, I think that this is precisely the sort of system that I think we should expect from China and from the Chinese system of government. It is a system of government that ultimately understands that it has to take responsibility for problems. It doesn't, pass the buck to another party with an election. And we see this problem now in other societies where there's a perpetual failure to deal with issues, and they continue to fester and create social divisions that create political instability and even the degeneration of middle income groups. China clearly is trying to address these, and we know that in the new era, since President Xi took office, improving governance and ensuring that this incredible capacity that China has in terms of not only dealing with problems, but dealing with big problems, but also creating government agencies for dealing with problems, making sure that all these things can come together and actually work for the good of the people. This is what is really, I think, truly powerful about the Chinese system, and we're really seeing this now working at the local level and helping to solve some of these issues.
Well, on that note, we come to the end of today's show. Many thanks to our guests. You can also find us on the CGTN app on YouTube. I'm Xu Qianduo. Thanks for being with us. See you next time.